Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Player Power Rankings. Technically, week two of this, but if you're only seeing week one, you're only going to get week one. Sucks to suck. I am Rutledge's Beast, and I'm joined by the one and the only Voslo.
And here I am, pretty excited, and we're here, and we're going to talk about the top five in every role of the week. It'll probably change week to week as we see more of what a player can do and what a player can't do, and what their carry potential is for their team. And we're going to start right in there. We're going to go right for the top lane. And you know what? Number one, between the both of us, not too big of a surprise. Rutledge's Beast. His plays for his team have been very good. His lane control is very good as well. He's very good at the 1v1 scenario and just his laning presence. Sievert is number two. He's 1v1ing is fantastic. His TP plays are a little bit lackluster, which is why he's probably both of our number two. And then we have Big Play Jadway, who is kind of like the whole package, but he's just a tad short. His laning isn't bad, but he's not as good as the two above him. Same thing with his TP plays. And then when we get to about four is when we have a bit of a divide. And I have the Tangelo over here at the number four, and my buddy Rutledge over here has Fridge at number four. And why would you think that Fridge and even Dewey are better than my boy Tangelo?
So the biggest problem I have with Tangelo is the fact that he's not really a carry. He doesn't. He can, I don't really think Tangelo in any of his games can, even when he was on Frosty, could pop off and necessarily carry the game and be the driving force of why they win that game. He maybe had one performance like that. I can't remember when he played Aatrox, I think once. But for the most part, he doesn't have what I think all the people in the top five have to have, which is that ability to pop off, carry a game, be the driving force of why a team wins that game on any given weekend of their matches. So that's why I have him. I have him farther down. But again, we're covering top five, and I have Fridge at four because of that reason. He's looked really good at carrying his team, or at least being a driving force of why they've been winning in the last 2 weeks, and he's been playing more consistently. So I just see Fridge as being kind of that impact player for ESG recently. Which drives him into the top four at my number four spot. And then Dway looked a lot better on tanks or a lot better off tanks this last week on things like the Yasuo. But we'll have to see if it's more of a one trick kind of pony kind of thing. He's just a Yasuo player. That's the only thing he can play off tank. So we'll have to see. That's why he's kind of fitting at number five, but he still ranks in those top fives for impact players for his team.
See, I have a Tangelo at number four. I think he has had one or two games where he has popped off. I think he has two games as Renekton where he's just gone completely mad and has been a absolute split push driving force for the team of Frosty when he was on that roster. So that's why I put him a little bit higher because if he's given the capability to, I don't know how often it can be. Maybe a little bit more often. Maybe he has a jungler now that can help get some resource into him. Maybe see if he can do more things as a split pusher. But I put him a little bit higher. And that's my reasonings why. Why don't you tell us about the jungle there, Rutledge?
Yep, so we'll go ahead and transition into jungle. So our top five for the jungle. So we actually immediately have differences here in our list. I have Gimpy the first, my jungler, as number one, and you have Drakenrich. Now, Vaso, my question is for you. Why but you have Gimpy at number two, so you clearly think Gimpy's a strong jungler, but why is Drakenrich better than Gimpy? Because Drakenrich is my number four spot.
I think Drakenrich has shown his pre 10 minutes has been very, very good. His understanding of when the laners around him are warding and his ability to go around the wards and just still get ganks off and get lots of good early pressure for his team and then still play out team fights quite well as the game scales. The game is very early game focused right now, and a better early game jungler, even on a tank player, is probably super important and something that I have to rate higher than Gimpy. Gimpy being the number two for me because his early game is pretty lackluster. He is not really too much pressure on the map pre six. It's not the greatest thing to look at, but his team fighting presence and his engaged tools that he brings to Conquer are very important to that team.
Yeah, so I do agree with you in a lot of what you said. I do think Gimpy, Drakenrich is better early game, and Gimpy. I just think Gimpy's value though in his mid to late. Besides a couple hit or miss games where it's just been maybe a bad call, but for the most part, Gimpy's been like honestly a driving force for why we've been able to finish and close games. And I just think Drakenrich has kind of just been maybe that flame that starts the fire early game for OCN. But when that doesn't happen, I don't think he really does much all game. So that took a little bit away from him. For me, and that's why he's down at my number four. But that's why I have Gimpy at number one, which we at least are closely agreeing on that. Let's go ahead and move in to my number 2 spot, which is Late Primate. You have Late Primate at number 4. Why such a big difference? We kind of swapped him and Drakenrich for me and you. Why is that?
Well, I think the Primate's really much more of a utility jungler. He's very good with warding and dewarding for his team and playing around the vision game quite nicely. But I don't think mechanically he's done too much for the side of ESG. He's pretty much a player that I think would excel quite nicely playing Nunu. He doesn't really have to do too much and just like get the vision down and do well. He has been a good driving force for his team, but he's not really mechanically strong. He's not really I don't think his pathing has been immaculate or anything like that. So I feel like he's probably about a number 4 jungler just due to his utility prowess.
Yeah, I actually do think he's a utility jungler too. But the reason I have him at number 2, even though he's not necessarily a carry, he provides such a value to his team. In this role, he's been another reason. Him and Fridge combined have been, I think, the sole reason why ESG has been able to kind of climb and I think be more of a threat than people are giving them right now. I actually really like I've cast a couple of their games recently, and I think they've definitely improved significantly. Even since I've scrimmed them and we played them. So ever since he's joined, along with Fridge's great performances, has been such like with vision scores, with deep wards, with late game team fighting and macro calls. I believe he just brings so much to his team that even though he's not necessarily super hard carrying because he's playing more of the Sojuanis, the Trundles, he's still just helping his team get to that point, helping Fridge allow Fridge to kind of excel and allow the rest of his team to kind of perform better than they were. So let's go ahead and move into you actually. So I have you at number 3, you have you at number 3 as well. So what's the reasoning behind that one? I'm gonna go ahead and say mine first. Actually, I think you're just a solid jungler. I think you bring a decent amount of value to your team. You're kind of utility when you need to be because that shows from when you play support. But you also can play more of those carries and play maybe more diverse champ pool than some of these junglers on this list. But I don't necessarily think you bring as much utility and as much carry potential as my top 2, which is why I have you at number 3.
I have myself at number 3 because I think I'm pretty good in the jungle. I think I have a pretty good idea of pathings and playing around wards and such. But frankly, I haven't played as much jungle as I would like. I've been pretty much practicing mostly support, so I got to get back into the role right now. I feel like I can climb up the ranks a little bit, maybe get up to that number 1 spot, maybe for you and for me, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I just gave that, like you said, you hadn't played jungle a lot recently. I gave that to you out of respect because I know you can at least play like the majority of roles at least at a competent level. And I also think jungle is one of the weaker roles in duo. So next, and for our next 2 spots, we already talked about, we have Late Primate and Drakenrich switched. So Drakenrich is your number 2, or your number 1, actually, and he's my number 4, and you have Late Primate at number 4. So let's go ahead and move on to the 5th spot where we both have different people at this. I think it's interesting. I have a Leslo. I know, everybody's going to be shocked. I have a Leslo at number 5. I think he's a solid mechanical player. And if this is his main role, I'm hoping to see better things than I saw from AD Carry, which was a yikes. But no, I think he can be a solid jungler. Like, I'm picturing him being better than he was at AD Carry. So if that does line up with what he's saying, but again, he kind of just runs his mouth, I'm going to go ahead and give him the benefit of the doubt because I think the rest of the list is just kind of all kind of close and kind of weak. Not super weak, not that everybody's crap below them, but it's definitely like a pretty close race past that point. But you have Akiko. Why Akiko over Leslo?
Well, I have Akiko at number 5, specifically because he's been a pretty good driving force for Lobster Gang. Just their ability to play out their early games and then snowball those leads into victories. Akiko's been a pretty good driving force for that. He does play a lot of Warwick, and if he's allowed to, it's like one of his best champions, so that's pretty good on him. But like, I think he's still a solid jungler, and his pathing has been pretty nicely. I have to put a Leslo much lower for myself because I don't know enough about his jungling, and for me, that's an unknown quantity. And I'm not that betting man. I'm just gonna put you down low. I haven't seen what you can do. You're last on my list just because I don't know anything about your jungling.
Yeah, and honestly, I am kind of a betting man, and I just think that if he was a decent enough AD carry, for the most part, at least like middle of the pack probably. That if he's not in his main role there, and in the jungle, which I think the role is kind of easier. And again, with the pool being kind of weaker, that's why I gave him at least a little bit of respect. We'll see. I might completely have him at the bottom of this pack like you do, but we'll have to see into next week. All right, so you want to go ahead and transition us into mid lane?
Absolutely, and I'm gonna start off with my boy Akarsian, the pony boy himself from the Gracers. Now, I got him number one. I think he's got a pretty diverse champion pool. He's shown that he's been probably one of the better laners just as a mid laner as a whole. His roaming has been kind of lackluster for the most part so far, but I think he can do a little bit better. You have him at number two. Why is that?
Yeah, so I have Phoenix at number one, and Akarsi at number two. Last week, if any of you viewers could have seen my rankings, it was actually Phoenix number two, Akarsi number one, same as Leslo or Voslo. Sorry, I'll never disrespect you like that again. I promise.
Thank you. My heart is hurt.
So I have Phoenix at number one over Akarsian because last week Akarsian had the abysmal performance and kind of blew up, and then so I think what he did was he devalued me as a leader, and I thought he originally was more of that leader role. I mean, he was the captain of it, and seeing that kind of come from him, I think I just devalued some of his leadership abilities, and that's where I think I actually put Phoenix under him for, is because I think they're both kind of equally on par skill level. I think Phoenix has more of an ability to pop off than Akarsian. I think Akarsian is probably a little bit more consistent, but I'm going to give the ability for that Phoenix to pop off, and the fact that he's normally kind of stays in his lane and does what his team needs him to do. But Akarsian didn't show up last week for his team and ended up kind of imploding that team. Even though he's luckily still on it, and 9ups did come back with hopefully a pretty solid roster. But yeah, so that's why I kind of just devalue him a little bit this week.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. I understand your reasonings and things like that. I have to put Phoenix a little bit lower for myself here. I feel like his champion pool is not very large. I believe he's been expanding it, which is good for him. I also don't think he's been the greatest roamer, but whatever. I think Rage Inducing, as we both have him as number three, and he's been a pretty big driving force for OC Nation. He's been pretty solid all around. I haven't seen him completely pop off yet. I just feel like he just does well. But I have for myself a little bit of a strange one. I have Arda pretty high on my list. I have him at number four. So far he's been pretty much a Rise one trick. You do not have him as high because probably for that reason. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I actually don't have Arda in the top five at all. I actually have Kopech at number five. The reason I don't have Arda at number four is because I think Difurian is actually the kind of caps off the top. The top four in mid lane, I think, are significantly better than the rest of the pack. I think there's a decently big drop off. I mean, I think they're still pretty number five. I think he still brings value, but I think those top four are really kind of like standout players and can really pop off for their teams and kind of be the only carries in the mid lane and duo, like the hard carries. So I think Difurian is straight up a better mechanical player than Arda, even with Arda being on a rise. But yes, you kind of alluded to why I don't have him even in the top five. I think his rise is actually pretty good. I think he sometimes doesn't play super well even in the late game when rise should excel, because he's gotten to that point multiple times on Aether and hasn't been able to pull him through. So I don't think he's necessarily like the be all end all on Aether's team. I think that's more in the AD carry role, which we will talk about in a little bit. So I think their wins lately aren't necessarily because of him. I think he just brings a kind of a decently consistent amount of damage to the team, but he still gets caught out a little bit too much. And like you said, he's just kind of a one trick.
Yeah, and then at my number five, I have Glutes Gains. I'm literally liking what the Lobster Gang has been pretty bringing to the table. A lot of Lobster dinners have been pretty good. You have Kopech number five. You did mention that already. I have Glutes Gains at number five. I feel like he's been a pretty just kind of like filling the hole that Lobster needs as just like this middle of the pack mid laner, but he's been doing quite well and able to roam and still play around his team quite well. So that's why I have him at number five. And that's pretty much that for that.
All right, let's go ahead and move into AD here. So AD is an interesting one. We actually have the same four people in the top four, but we have them in a different order completely. We don't have one that matches. So really quickly, I have Ageless Tiger at number one. I think he's just the all-around best AD carry. I think he brings team fighting, he brings lane, he brings pretty much the whole reason we've seen why if he doesn't play, skill cap doesn't win. I think that's almost like cut and dry. So I think that's how much value he brings to his team. So that's why I have him at number one. I don't think there's many people that have as poor of teams as he does. And then you have Jocko at number two for me. The reason I have him at number two is because I think he's just a bit like just a bit overall worse than Ageless Tiger. Still top 80 carry in this league, but he doesn't necessarily have the greatest laning that we've seen. Him and Jester have been doing a much better job at winning lane, but it hasn't been quite on the par as with Ageless and his ability to kind of like take a lead from lane and just carry the game with it. So I have him right below Ageless. But you have Ageless Tiger number 2, and your big number 1, which is my number 3, Hero of Termina. Termina. Why? Terima. Sorry.
Termina. It's actually Termina.
Okay.
We just typoed it.
Yeah,
That's
it's
fine.
fine. It's fine.
Whatever. Hero of Termina is, to me, probably the best AD carry in the league. I think his laning is fantastic. His idea of how to win his matchups very well. His when he can roam, when he can't roam. His ability to make picks off in fights and where he can be and can't be in a fight. He's very, very good at playing his team fights and his spacing, auto spacing. Thank you, Double Lift. So I really think that he's like the whole package. I think Aegis Tiger looks a lot better for the side of Skill Cap Gaming, but is like pretty much a good reason why they win. Is able to take a lead and like run away with it because of the driving force of their support. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then you have Gawain at number 4. I have him at number 3. I think he's a bit better in the lane than Jocko Locko is. I think he's a little bit better in the early game. I think his later on in the game is a little bit worse than Jocko Locko's, but his what he brings to the team in the early game is very important in the current meta, and that's something that I value highly. Jocko Locko being not too far behind him, as I said, a little bit worse in lane, but a little bit better in the late game, and that's why I put him at number 4 or number 5. No, number 4. I can count.
Number 4.
I can count.
And then we look at the number 5 spot. We both have different people in that spot completely. So I have Shuno from EG, and you have Killjoy from OCN. Why?
Well, I like Killjoy as his AD carry performances on the Lucian have been quite well. We haven't really seen too much. I also know that he's been playing a lot of mages in the bot lane as well, but his Lucian has been quite good. I haven't seen too much like explosion out of the guy or anything like that. He hasn't really wowed or impressed me, so I feel like his mechanics are good, but not like amazing. I don't know enough about his laning to have like a really good idea of his laning as well. So I just kind of have number 5. He's on a winning team. Maybe he's just like looks better because he's on a winning team. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure Shuno does quite well for EG. As I'm sure you have something to say about that.
Yeah, so I think again, kind of referencing back what I talked about during the top laners was I think the top 5 should be kind of impact players for their team, and I think Shuno has proven to be kind of one of the few reasons why EG has any wins. Back when he was playing Tristana and they were one of the teams topping Baron's division was because he was carrying on Tristana and being able to kind of chain those good plays that they would make together and carry that late game even with the bad macro that they were having and have had since. So I just see him kind of being that leader and being that consistent player in the AD carry role. He's had very few like really terrible games when the rest of his team has had pretty terrible games. So I just think that consistency, that leadership gives him in my top 5. He does barely round it out because I think he needs to improve. Lately, his performance hasn't been that great, and that's why I think they haven't been winning. So we'll see maybe if he gets back on those comfort picks, if he can pick it back up and then kind of climb up my ranks a little bit. And I also think I just think the top 4 AD carries that we both have are really strong mechanical players, so it's going to be kind of a challenge. You can't get up that high with just leadership alone. But let's go ahead and move into support. I'll let you take over since you're a former support.
I've played the role once or twice. Right in the top, you and I both have Buggy. He's been a massive driving force for the side of Skill Cap Gaming, as I'm sure we both can see. If he's on that team, he's just able. They're so good at playing around their team together. Yes. Buggy just being a massive Nami threat. And then I have Hayes as my number 2. Maybe a little bit of bias coming in there, but you have Jester at number 2. Why is that?
So I have Jester number 2. I think I get to see him a little bit more in action. I think he's been a little bit undervalued all season because he started out playing with Sparky, and Sparky was a very passive laner, so we like almost never gave them resources, and they just kind of got punished for that. So they just kind of looked like our clear weakness, even though I really think it was more just we had such a passive laning AD carry, and we didn't ever want to put any resources down there, so he got kind of punished for that in his performances. I think he's really like crazy strong on a couple picks. in the support role. And I know people can't really ban them because they have so many bans the rest directed at our team. So if we honestly just put him on his most comfortable picks, I think he is one of the top supports, if not the top support week to week, especially with our stronger AD carry, which we'll see if that plays out that way. I do agree that Buggy is just super strong. Him and Ageless Tiger together are the reason why Skill Cap was doing so well for as long as they were. Without Ageless Tiger, though, you had nothing, even with Skill Cap, because you can only support. You need something to support to help you win. But let's move on from number 2. So you have Jester Time at number 3, but I have Nezumi. You have Nezumi at number 4. Why Nezumi at number 4? And did you explain why Hayes?
I did not explain why I'm
Okay,
Hayes, but I
sorry,
can
go ahead.
absolutely get into detail about that. I have Izumi at number 4 specifically because I think he's a really, really strong laner, and he's very good around playing around with his team, getting vision and taking care of vision. He's very team reliant, and AOL is very good at playing around as a unit. I don't think he kind of as a support, I feel like he has an abusable laning phase, like really, really early on. But if he's given some certain picks, like specifically Brand, he will absolutely dominate a 2v2 lane and just show what he can do with some certain champions. So I put him at number 4 because he's pretty mechanically strong, but I don't think his warding is all too great and is easily spotted while warding. So that's not a really big thing for me. I have Hayes at my number 2 specifically because I think his warding is good. He has been a great support. He can play enchanters. He can play tank so far. He's played both with Alesslo and Datam Tater Tots earlier on in the season. So he's done quite good things for his team so far. Maybe we can continue seeing that on the new Naughty Nips, and that would be great to see. So I put him a little bit higher. Maybe it's me just being hopeful. Who knows? But then I have at my number 5 Starstro, but you have Hayes at number 5, and you also have Sea Snatch at number 4, whom I only have at number 8.
Yeah, you definitely have C-Satch a little bit down there. The reason I give C-Satch that value, because basically our difference here is you have Starstro and I don't. We'll just more talk about that. But I have C-Satch up there because on his Brand's performance, he's actually able to kind of create a carry role out of the support role. I actually don't know how much I value him on any other thing besides Brand, but it's hard to really ban Brand against them because of Big Play Jawway and some of the other players on OCN. They usually pull a lot of bans. So, seeing as it's pretty hard to ban Brand, if he's able to get that champion, he's able to put out a lot of damage. He can honestly kind of carry OCN from that support role. And he also has pretty good vision. He has pretty good laning. He just seems like he's one of the few out of this list, besides maybe the top 3, that can really carry their team from that position. You concur?
Right. I agree. What about Hayes over there in that number 5 spot there?
So, and I have Hayes at 5. I think he's been a little bit overhyped from Alesslo running his mouth a little bit. And seeing from Frosty's performance, and this definitely is an individual thing. I'm just trying to mention this because it never seemed like he was really ever keeping his team in it, per se. It never seemed like I was like, wow. Like, I'm more comparing why he's not number 2 for like he is for you. I never had any moments where I'm like, wow, Hayes is great. It's always been Hayes is super consistent, and I think he is a reason his team can win, but I don't think it's like he's making his AD carry better, per se. I think it's more he is just playing his job, doing what he needs to do to win consistently, and his team just has to be able to kind of carry him or use his benefit to carry the game. But it's not anything too dramatic where he's like just making them a totally different player.
All right.
So to wrap up, that's our top 5s. You can also find this on the Discord. We will have it posted hopefully as soon as possible. But this has been it for Week 8 power rankings of individual players. It's been Rutledge's Beast, and I've been joined by
Voslo, and make sure you check us out. It'll probably be posted on the YouTube of Duo Esports, the YouTube channel, and then it'd be fantastic to give us that like and subscribe button.
Yeah, definitely make sure you like and subscribe and comment below if you have any topics you want us to discuss during the next power rankings. We'll see you guys next week.